Well, we'll go ahead and get started in my podcast. I'm going to be talking about the future of Power Platform. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Daniel Christian. I'm a Microsoft MVP. My focus is primarily on the Power Platform, so anything that has to do with Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI integration, that's what I do, including Power Virtual Agents for chatbots. So our agenda for today, at least for the next 15 minutes or so, is going to be around the future of Power Platform. Before I go over there, just want to give you an overview of some of my sessions that are coming up. So I do have a session today, which is Wednesday. It's going to be on make use of all the Power Apps admin features and also some free tools. So if you're interested in that, it's a session in the afternoon. And then tomorrow and Friday, I have some more sessions. I will also be doing the Ask the Experts today, and in that one if you have any questions about the Power Platform in general, stop by and in the process pick up some swag as well. All right, so one of the things that I want to do is when I talk about the future of Power Platform, it is important to know where we stand right now. So in order for that to even happen, Power Apps or the Power Platform as we know, it actually stands in three different sections. So there is the standalone, there is the SharePoint integrations of it, and then there's also in the Microsoft Teams. So when you talk about Power Platform as a whole, and especially in the standalone version, there is Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI, and Power Virtual Agents. Now in Power Apps, we have the Canvas apps, model-driven apps, and then we have the portal apps as well. And then we have the Power Automate, Power BI, and Power Virtual Agents. Now in SharePoint, we've got the customized form, which is the backend engine for that is Power Apps. We've got the workflows, which is the Power Automate, and then the reports are all run using Power BI. Now in Microsoft Teams, we have the same functionality as well. We've got Canvas apps. In Canvas apps, they are built using the Power Automate Canvas apps. They're directly tied inside Teams. And then we also have the Power Automate flows. The Power Automate flows are used with Power Automate, of course. And then we've got the chatbot. So I always talk about it as three different integration pieces of it because there's the standalone, SharePoint, and Microsoft Teams. So now that you know about this, let's start talking about the future of this. Where is this going to go? What is the actual future of the Power Platform? And what should we expect for that? So one of the points I want to make is that each of these versions of Power Apps, specifically from the Canvas Studio standpoint, they actually have their own Canvas Studio. So it's interesting that when you go and actually do their downloads or when you go and build the apps, if you dig into the advanced settings, you will know that there's actually three different versions of the Canvas Studios. So something to think about. So let's talk about the future of the Power Platform, all right? And one of the things I want to talk about is some of the things which have just come out, features that have just come out, and they're already out there and people are using them. Some of them which are out in production, those that are in preview, and some of them which are going to be in future releases. So I'll be covering those at least in detail. So let's get started. So the first thing that has caught everybody's attention in Power Apps, especially when it wasn't announced, was Power FX. So one of the questions I get asked a lot is, Daniel, what is Power FX? Is it new? Is it something that has been in the works? What is Power FX? So my response to that has always been, well, it's a bit of both. What Microsoft has finally done is that they said that the coding formula language, and coding is a bad term, but lack of a better term, that's all I'm going to say, is that those type of formulas that they use, there was, from the Excel-ish type of a formula structure is what they always talk about, but now finally they're giving it a name. That name is called as Power FX. But there's more to Power FX because they focus on these key things. One of them is this, keep it simple. So that's why they have a very Excel-ish type of a Power formula style. So if you're comfortable with Excel, then that's basically a very same type of formula over there. But the simple piece is this type of coding is actually done purely for people who are not developers. They're actually there for all of those who are first-time makers or are very good with Excel or very good with making presentations in PowerPoint. This type of very simple FX type of a formula design is for them. And that also comes to the next point, which is the Excel consistency. The language, if you're very comfortable with building macros in Excel, you are by default going to adopt this so much faster in Power Apps. So that's basically the consistency of the Excel over there. And then finally, the key thing, there's so much more I could talk about, But the key thing is, do you use declarative format? So what is the declarative format? One of the great ways to express that is the type of coding that we've always seen in the past, C, C sharp, this type of coding that we are familiar with. Those are very step-by-step, people need to know, okay, what is this step, what is the next step, and then so on and so forth, and that's how they actually do their type of coding. Declarative coding is a little bit more different. It's a lot more which we already see in Excel, it's a lot what we see in Power Apps, is that people need to just know that what is the final outcome that I want to do. I don't need a step-by-step thing. What is the outcome? What am I trying to achieve? And then everything over there will automatically take care of it by going ahead and doing the pre-fetching work for you and going ahead and making it reusable as well. So the whole concept of this, where the maker describes what they want to do to their logic and not exactly know the hows and the whens, this allows the compiler to optimize by performing operations in parallel deferring work. So PowerFX has been one of the big things, and I want to kind of bring that to your attention because it's something that Microsoft has already said that it is in the works, and they're going to release that little by little for almost the next 2 years. But in addition to the PowerFX, as they're building onto it, they've also talked about the concept of natural language to PowerFX. So what is this natural language? Granted, I gave some examples of what PowerFX would be, but instead of us going ahead and putting in an if function with the filter, over there will actually be a section now, because if anybody, you have Power Apps makers and you have the studios, and you know that on the top right of the studio, there will be properties, and then there's the advanced. There's going to be an additional one called ideas. And in the ideas, there will be a place where you basically just go and put in a natural language statement. And instead of you going ahead and putting these functions, you basically just go over there and say, how do I go ahead and make the two of them equal? Or how do I go ahead and add the two of them up? You make very simple natural language comments over there, and then Power Apps will automatically go ahead and create the formula for you, be it whatever you're trying to do, and it'll go ahead and save it. So it's literally that simple. And so the natural language for the PowerFX is going to be the next big thing that is coming, and that's personally something that I'm excited about. In addition to the natural language, there are some examples, because an example that I gave you is somebody wants to say, show the 10 orders of that item in the product name, and it'll give you the formula to automatically go and filter it. It'll also give you that AI generated output. So it's not going to automatically just do it for you and you get the outcome. It'll actually give you the output code. It'll actually give you that, hey, if you want to see the first 10 orders of that item, it's going to be first and open the brackets, sort, and then search. It'll actually give you that formula. And so now you won't have to worry about going ahead and taking care of any of the stuff where, okay, is it delegable? Am I getting all the right answers? Have I gone and selected the correct one? You don't have to worry about any of that. It automatically goes and takes care of that for you. So that's for the natural language for PowerFX. As far as timeline goes, it's a different process. I mean, it's going to be by the end of 2021. But they're coming up in small chunks and small pieces. So the first one that's going to be is Dataverse for calculated columns, AI Builders, Data Prep, and then Power Virtual, and adding the version to Power Virtual Agents over there as well. So all of that will be out and recorded. And so I'm excited by the end of 2021 to see more and more of this PowerFX coming out. All right, so next thing is not new, as far as it's not the new release, but it's already been out yet, and that's the responsive design feature available in Power Apps Canvas app. Now, what I've been personally excited about the responsive design is that it's such a breath of fresh air to make things easier and so much more faster. As far as the concept of using containers, and to go ahead and if you put some controls inside the container, it automatically goes ahead and becomes responsive. That is the neat functionality of responsive. Now, this was not a future release. This has been out for a while, but they're constantly improving it on that. And then there's a lot of us MVPs like myself, Reza, we've all gone ahead and put out videos on stuff like this to make it a lot more easier and make it intuitive. But the overall concept is that if you use a container, and if you go ahead and put controls inside that container, it will by default become responsive. So you don't have to do all the heavy thinking about, well, do I need to put an X or do I need to go and put in a Y? Well, if the person goes ahead and changes a device from landscape to portrait, well, then the width needs to be a little bit bigger than the height. You won't have to do any of that. The responsiveness will automatically take care of that. And that's a feature which has already been out. but it's also the one that is building on a lot of that. So that's something which I personally have been very excited about. All right, so the NF function. Now, if NF also stands for the New Field Communication, it's basically another type of scanning technology, and that has been out for a while, at least from the preview side. By the time you see this video, it'll probably be a GA as well. In it, now you don't need to have a NFC scanner. You can literally use your smart device and then use that NFC control which comes in with your Power Apps. And in your Power Apps, you can go ahead and now do that type of scanning, get that information directly into your Power Apps, and then save it wherever you want, whether your data source is Dataverse or SharePoint or SQL. You can go ahead and save all of that. NFC function is very similar to in the past they had got out the QR scanner, the barcode scanner. Those is the same process. There will be a component available. You go ahead and leverage the component, but you use your own phone device to do the scanning, and it just works. So that is for the NFC function. All right, so the Microsoft Power Platform CLI, the CLI over here is for the command line integration. This has been out now since June, but there is a little change that happened. So as of June 14th, 2021, Microsoft did go ahead and announce that it said effective of June 2021, the Microsoft Power Apps CLI is rebranded to Microsoft Power Platform CLI. And that was basically the only announcement over there, but all in all, Power Platform CLI is a very simple but a one-stop developer location which empowers not just developers but ISVs as well to go ahead and perform various of their operations, build solutions like environment, lifecycle features, authentications, all of these solutions, and they'll be able to go ahead and sell that as well. So by selling it, package it all together as a solution, put it up in portals or codes or components, and then go ahead and sell that. So the Power Platform command line integration has been out for a while. Just the key thing is they went and changed the name from the Power Apps to the Power Platform. But then it's been out, and it's actually going to be a really good sync between the developers and the Power Platform users and all of those CSVs to give them an opportunity to go ahead and sell that. Canvas code tool integration is the part of the Power Platform CLI. So what I mean by that is the functionality just do the Power Platform CLI. Could be more on the dev heavy, coding heavy, but it does give you the functionality to go ahead and use the Canvas code source. So what that means is that when you've gone ahead and actually done any of the stuff with your app, whether you build it as an app or a component, you can go ahead and actually export that or download it depending on how you do it, and you get that MSAPP file. And when you get that MSAPP file, say you open that up through Visual Studio, in Visual Studio, it will almost unzip, and you can see the entire package, the folders, the files inside it. And say you want to make just a very simple change, like you've got an icon, or you've got to go ahead and change the icon type. You might have used one icon, which is of a certain thing, but I want to go and change the icon. Well, instead of that, I don't have to open up the studio and go and make a change for each and every one of them. I already know what the icon type is, so I just open it up in the studio, go ahead and do like a find and replace, get what I want, and it just makes that change. So it's pretty interesting how that works. I am looking forward to this primarily because it can help me do a lot of find and replace. I don't have to go ahead and open up the studio. I don't have to go ahead and open up each and every one of the screen, do a save and publish. Granted, that is still the easy way to do it, but the flexibility to go ahead and do it this way in a much bigger chunk really makes it easy. So Canvas source code tool integration with Power Platform CLI is going to be a really great thing to look forward to. So one of the questions people ask me is, when I'm talking about stuff like this, is that, Daniel, will Canvas app and will model-driven app become one? Because right now there are two different swim lanes, there are two different products. Are they going to go ahead and become one? And the answer to that is, I don't know. But they're going to be, right now from the basis on which I'm seeing all these new releases coming out, they are giving it the flexibility to integrate the two. In fact, a release was just made, a new feature was just announced yesterday, that now you can go ahead and take the Canvas apps and embed that into Pages in model-driven apps, and it makes it a lot more easier, a lot more seamless. The Pages actually go ahead and fill it up well. The Canvas apps go ahead and fill it up over there. So the process I want to talk about is, let's think through this. Is what are the differences between the Canvas app and the model-driven app? and then we can kind of make some guesstimate if actually they're going to merge into each other. So one of the big things about Canvas app is Canvas app gives you the functionality to do a high customization. When I talk about high customization, it literally is a blank canvas and you paint the app over there. Well, model-driven app doesn't do that. Model-driven app is more restricted customizations. They've basically gone ahead and given you a certain places that you can do some customization, but that's basically it. As far as full control on full control or full way to handle all the permissions on each and every control, yes, in Canvas app I can do that. I can go ahead and make sure it makes something visible, not visible. I can go and make all of that work. Well, model-driven app, it's a little limited. And in model-driven app, most of the control, if not all of it, happens only at the data level. Data integration, we already know. It's in Power Apps. We've got now over 500 connectors. I put 450 here, but it's getting to about 500 connectors now. But when it comes to model-driven apps, it is mostly Dataverse. And then use cases, we already know. Anybody who's done Canvas apps, it's a very task-based or role-based. Like, what is your scenario? What is your need? What was the task that you were trying to either automate or make it a lot more easier? That is what the use case for Canvas is. Model-driven apps are a lot more complex business type of applications. And then the focus, like what was the focus of using Canvas? The focus of using Canvas is it's driven by the user experience, primarily by the need of the user. Model-driven app is kind of the opposite. Model-driven app is more of a driven by the data model. And then finally, I hate saying the L word, but it's finally to do with licensing options. When we talk about Canvas apps, if you already have a Microsoft Enterprise or a business account, a lot of the Power Canvas app functionalities come basically free. Granted, you've got limitations with standard connectors only, but they do come with all that flexibility. Dynamics or the model-driven side, it's not that way. You've got to go ahead and have a Dynamics 365 license, or at least the Power Apps per app or per user license, or for Power Automate per user or per flow license. So that, now that you've kind of seen these differences over there, having the two blended together as just one service, it is quite a feat that they will have to achieve. But personally, from my experience and having worked with this product for close to, definitely over 4 years, but ever since it was in private preview, that's as far as I've worked with it. I do feel that they will help the two to be integrated very well. But they will still be two separate ones, because if you remember right at in beginning, I said where we begin, there are literally 3 different iterations of Power Apps right now. There is the standalone, there is one inside SharePoint, and then there's one inside Teams. Well, how are they going to blend all of that in? So personal opinion is that they will stay separate, but heavy integration between the two. To some way they can make it seamless as well. So let's switch gears and now talk about the Power Automate AI Builder. Those are constantly features coming out about that. The big one about Power Automate AI Builder is the concept to do text recognition, pre-built models, form processing, and document automation. So as far as the whole text recognizer goes, over there, an example is, say you've got a device or a big whatever inventory place over there, and you've already got text which is a code on it or serial number, something that you use for your inventory purposes. Now with text recognition, you can go ahead and just take a picture. It will already be scanned, and then you can go ahead and put that wherever in whatever form process that you have. Previously, we would have to do a training, and we would have to go ahead and do all of that. But with the text recognizer, it'll already have that. But in addition, there are going to be some pre-built models that are already be available. And this is all, by the way, already out there in Power Automate. You can go ahead and start playing with it. So here's some examples: invoice processing, business card reader, identity document reader, and then the receipt processing. These are just some examples where you do a little bit of training, and then after you've done some training, you can go ahead and come up with an entire automation process right from the time that you get either this email, a document, or these files that are coming in through an emails as an attachment. You go through the automation forms processing process, and then the processed information can be saved wherever that you want. So it's really interesting from a PVA standpoint. That's something that I'm excited about. And then let's talk about Power Virtual Agents. So in Power Virtual Agents, one of the interesting things that I've known is the whole functionality to make the chat, the place where now PVA itself is going to be so much more versatile, that it will start telling you that, hey, you've actually got a couple of topics in your Power Virtual Agent that are pretty much going to be triggered for the same reason. So that is huge from a PVA standpoint, because then you will be able to do some guesstimates of saying that, okay, based on my logic, these two topics could be triggered by the same reasons because of whatever the end user asks. And that can actually help me do some cleaning up. I could go ahead and change my trigger phrases so that I can make sure that this topic is completely unique as against the other one, because the moment they go ahead and blend in, your flow logic and your bots are going to start going a little bit crazy, and that's why it will take care of that. In addition to this, it will also give you some bot responses. It gives you more flexibility to use the bot framework composer, so you can actually do a little bit more, I wouldn't say heavy coding, but the flexibility to go ahead and actually put in some stuff from a coding standpoint, put in some URLs, put in the bot framework dialogue information. You can even make your information, your bot discussion, look a little bit more cleaner, because you can put some models in. That would be a big one, because right now I know we've got to do the markdown technique to at least make images a little bit better to go ahead and show information. But to put in the concept of adaptive cards, specifically the adaptive dialogue, that addition inside Power Virtual Agents using the bot framework really makes that whole end user functionality a lot more cleaner, a lot more interesting. So that is it should already be started rolling out in some of your tenants right now. Specifically, it'll be rolling out first inside the Microsoft Teams side, and you'll be able to start leveraging it. But more and more improvements, more and more additions which are coming out purely by the end of 2022. Cool. In addition, I already gave you an example about the bot framework composer. Same thing, going ahead and making your bots look a little bit more nicer and cleaner. The bot topic overlaps, I kind of briefly mentioned that, but I want to talk about it again, is the whole concept of using AI assistants. Because right now, as we stand, we don't have we have got to go in with our own, human eye and our human mind to understand that, okay, these two topics, in my mind, are two separate ones. But in reality, when you go with the AI's assistants, they might actually be overlapping with each other. So using the AI capabilities to do what is a topic overlap detection, which is in preview right now, by the way, it'll actually help you improve the triggering accuracies of your topics, because less and less topics will overlap, which means more and more will be accurate. And if you've asked a certain question which will trigger it, the correct topic will always trigger. You won't have a scenario where, hey, 80% of the time this is accurate, but for some reason, 20% of the time, wrong topics are getting triggered. Well, right now, after that, the AI capabilities kick in, and it'll actually help you improve that. Cool. Huge one for me on the Power Virtual Agents was the integration of Power Virtual Agents directly into Power Apps Portal. And let's think about that. Power Apps Portal is the first service in the Power Apps side where you can make it public facing. No authentication is required. You can actually go and either put a model-driven app type of a model over there, or you can even make a nice page. Well, you can now take it a step further by putting in your Power Virtual Agents chatbots in that Power Apps Portal, which will be readily available for your websites, or you can make it readily available for non-authenticated users to go ahead and start using it. So that actually is pretty huge. I'm excited about that piece also coming out. So a couple of additions that I want to talk about outside each other, Power Apps, Power Automate, or Power Virtual Agents, is some of the governance features and functionalities that are coming out. From a governance control standpoint, there is something called as endpoint filtering. So I can make for example, the SQL server a little bit more granular. Specifically, I can say that I want only certain amount of SQL servers to be touched at this level, at this IP address, and endpoint filtering will be a lot more granular, a lot more strict. In addition, they will give you now tenant isolation. So for those scenarios where you've got the flexibility to have multiple tenants, like you can have a dev, a QA, or a production one, over there, now you can actually say that I want my cross-tenant to be isolated, because not only are you saving it from your own self, but if you've got scenarios where you've got, say, some connectors that are approved and some connectors that go from, in your business case, in your business group, then in your business group over there, if it's approved on your side and you've got another tenant which has a business group, guess what? The two connectors could talk to each other. But tenant isolation is going to block that, and that is huge, because you can make sure that none of your data from your own environment goes ahead and gets leaked outside in another environment using purely services. You could build flows to do that, and it'll go ahead and actually take care of it. So tenant isolation was something I know I personally used it a lot, but I had to submit tickets for it. I had to go and put it as a Microsoft ticket, and then the Microsoft ticket would go and take care of that. And now they're actually giving you the functionality to fully control it, and then you decide across what the governance control should be for that. All right, they're also going to give you a tenant-wide analytics, and this is going to be available in your Power Platform Admin Center, which is your PPAC. In Power Platform Admin Center right now, when you go in to get all this information, it's only available at each of your environment levels. So I go into the Power Platform Admin Center, I go ahead and take a look at each of the environments, and each of the environments I can go see what's the capacity, how is the flows being used over there, how are the users using the apps, what are the heavy users. It's always at the environment level. But giving the tenant-wide analytics is actually a huge thing. It's actually one of the highly requested ones. And granted, it came with the Center of Excellence, but people had to go ahead and configure it themselves, set it up themselves. Granted, it's all free, which is great, but they had to do it themselves. But based on how the analytics that Microsoft is going ahead and gathering, they saw that the tenant-wide analytics used in COE was one of the biggest one. So they said, well, this is in such high demand that we won't let the users go through extra work to set it up. We'll directly provide this out of the box. So tenant-wide builds actually start coming out very soon. It'll be available in your Power Platform Admin Center. So in your Power Platform Admin Center, as long as you've got the Power Platform Admin role, you can go in and go ahead and actually start seeing it at the tenant level. Information protection, I kind of briefly already talked about that. It will go ahead and start leveraging the MIP labels as well. Goes ahead and actually starts leveraging the Office 365 security level, because MIP, as we know, Microsoft Information Protection is not new, but now they'll take it one step further and apply that in the Power Platform as well. And then finally, in the whole concept of using the pro developers versus the Power Platform, when a pro developer goes ahead and say, for example, makes a really good logic app flow, well, you can now call that logic app flow in Power Automate. So that synergy which is provided between developers and the Power Platform limits is getting more and more seamless, and they're actually giving all that flexibility, using the concept of, say, storing stuff in GitHub, which can be reused, or you can go ahead and do code first using Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code, and then go ahead and publish that using the Power Automate or the logic-based apps. That synergy actually equals no limits. So overall, we had talked about the four things, which is the Power Apps, Power Automate, Power Virtual Agents. We kind of briefly touched about Power BI more from the integration standpoint. But this synergy, these are the four big family members of the Power Platform, and that is going to be the entire future for this entire Power Platform. So as a quick overview, there are some neat features that are coming out. That's one of the key things I want you all to focus on. But also keep in mind that some of them have already been released. They are in private preview, and they'll be coming out much more fast, and there'll be a lot more enhancements going on. So all in all, hopefully this was helpful. Thank you all for attending my session over here. And as always, keep power apping. Thank you so much for watching my YouTube video. Remember, this is all free with fresh content that is updated on a weekly basis. So if you've already subscribed to my channel, thank you, and spread the word. If you haven't already, subscribe, click on the bell notification, and let the learning begin.